The yellow school bus sits at the corner like it always has, its paint faded, its stop sign rusted, its windows clouded as though they remember every face that once pressed against the glass. In daylight, it was ordinary, packed with backpacks, sneakers squeaking on the aisle, drivers honking as it crawled from stop to stop. But at night, when the neighborhood grows quiet, it waits for something else. Shadows slip across the seats. A low hum rattles the engine even when no one is inside. Some say it still makes its rounds after midnight, headlights cutting through empty streets, stopping at corners where no children stand. Step on board and the ride may never end. If familiar places like this turn unsettling in the dark, subscribe to Night Whispers, where even the roads you trust hold secrets. The bus sat where the lot met the road, its paint chalked and dull, windows fogged like old spectacles. By day it was a promise, the screech of brakes, the scramble for backpacks, but at night it belonged to something else. Porch lights blinked on down Main, dogs nosed at hedges, and the bus hunched in shadow, as if listening. Stories gather around objects like lint, and the bus had a thick coat. Kids dared each other to touch the emergency exit, to climb the metal steps and sit in the back where the light never reached. Teenagers turned those dares into gossip under stadium lights. Parents handed out warnings with the same breath as dessert. Over the years, the tales hardened. A girl whose backpack lay by the curb, a driver who swore a seat dipped beside him, headlights cutting the dark on roads that have no name.mr. Jensen at the bakery woke one morning to the smell of diesel though no truck had passed, and he found prints in the mud that stopped at the steps. Walter the custodian cleaned the seats every summer. He once sat behind the wheel and felt the bench next to him press down, as if a child had dropped in. He smelled glue and oranges and left the keys on the office peg after that, no longer wanting the weight of the wheel. Small things give those stories shape. Gum wrappers reappear under rows that were vacuumed that morning. Names written in marker on sea backs shift their letters when you look away. Vinyl cushions take the shape of hips they once held, a memory pressed into foam. People who climb aboard say the bus feels warm, too warm for an empty metal box dot on an October night when rain came hard. A child ran for the stop and never returned. Her backpack sat by the curb, unzipped and sodden, her juice box crushed into the grass. Flashlights cut trees raw. Volunteers called names until their voices thinned, and the town kept watch for days. Later, someone said headlights slid across a field and vanished between trees as if the earth had opened. The image folded into PTA meetings and bakery talk, and parents started pulling their kids inside earlier. Sightings stitched a map. Delivery drivers reported lights sweeping empty lanes. Teenagers on late shifts watched doors sigh open with no hands. Couples leaving the diner saw lights fold between houses where no route existed. Each new account pushed the line further, until the bus had a story for every corner of town. Sometimes the bus was a presence, a pressure in the air like a closed room easing open. Other times it moved, headlights migrating down lanes, a bell sounding twice though the school was dark. Rearview mirrors held the trickiest stories. Drivers swore they saw a cat behind the wheel, a face that blurred when you blinked. Skeptics call it fatigue, or stories grown large on small details. But when you stand under a street lamp and hear a chain that is not there, the smell of diesel seems less explainable. The bus rearranges life in small ways. Children avoid the lot at dusk. Joggers take extra blocks home. Delivery routes bend. Memory keeps the route, and the bus keeps its habits. It rolls by the spots where teenagers leaned and where old men sit on mornings. It idles by the lot where parents met and exchanged news. Houses begin to know it, and the town begins to map itself around the ghost of the route. Tonight, fog has come in from the river, a wet sheet that blurs porch bulbs into halos. The lot is a smudge, and the bus waits patient. A figure crosses the grass, boots leaving shallow prints, and climbs the metal step. Their hand hovers above the rail, breath fogging in the lamplight. The door whispers open, a soft hiss like something exhaling, and a pale interior light flicks on. Seats throw shadows like bowed heads, and from the upholstery there comes a sound that is almost a sigh. The figure steps forward, and the seat beside them dips, as if someone unseen has finally accepted company. The bell rings then, a single slow peal, and the tone rolls out over Main Street and does not fade. Across town, porch lights blink, and somewhere a window opens to night air. You stand frozen, and for a long breath you wonder if stepping back will hold you safe. Then the bus door closes without a hand, and the engine coughs alive. Engines that have been silent for years should not wake so easily. Yet the school bus coughed, rattled, and then steadied into a low growl, its headlights washing the fog into milk-white sheets. The figure on the steps froze, hand gripping the rail. They knew the stories, every whispered dare at bonfires, every rumor traded between lockers. But hearing the engine under their feet, feeling the vibration travel through the soles of their shoes, was different. It was no longer story. It was proof. The bus's interior smelled faintly of dust and orange peels, a mixture too sharp to be accident. The benches gleamed with an oily dampness, as if children had only just left. Yet every row sat empty, their vinyl backs waiting, expectant. The figure hesitated, then stepped deeper inside, the floor flexing beneath their weight. The overhead light sputtered once, twice, then steadied, a harsh fluorescent glow that painted everything the color of bone. Outside, the town slept in the fog. Inside, the world narrowed to aisle and seat, window and shadow. And in that silence, something stirred. It wasn't a sound at first, it was the weight. That same impossible dip, cushions sinking without bodies. The figure's gaze snapped toward the back row, where the seats seemed to fold and rise as if unseen legs had just slid into place. Nothing moved, yet the space felt occupied. A long moment passed. Then, faintly, came the scrape. Vinyl squeaking under pressure. Breathing slow, shallow, like the air moving through a child's nose when they don't want to be heard. The figure's mouth went dry. They told themselves it was memory, that benches sometimes creak, that machines hold echoes. But the sound was rhythmic, matching the beating in their own chest. And then came the whisper. Not words. Not yet. Just a rush of breath, so close it seemed to touch the back of their neck. They turned sharply, but the aisle was empty. The door at the front had closed, locking with a metallic sigh. Glass reflected nothing but their own pale face. The engine deepened its growl, steady, insistent, as if waiting for orders. And then the bus shifted. The figure felt the weight of motion, though the vehicle had not rolled an inch. The illusion of momentum pressed their body back, pulling them toward the rear rows. Every instinct screamed to leave, to push past the door and throw themselves into the fog. But their feet remained fixed. Something stronger than fear kept them inside. Curiosity, or maybe recognition. As if the bus had been waiting not for anyone, but for them. They walked the aisle, each step echoing, each bench exhaling the faint scent of glue, crayons, and warmth that should not exist. The further back they moved, the heavier the air grew, thick with a humidity that had no source. Condensation slicked the windows, dripping slow trails down the glass. Shapes formed in that fog, finger streaks, palm prints, smudges left by hands that no longer existed. They appeared row by row, always just ahead of the figure's gaze, as though unseen children were pressing from the other side, eager to be noticed. When they reached the final seat, the breathing returned. Louder now, broken by small shivers of laughter. The kind of laughter children make when sharing secrets or when daring each other to break rules. It came from everywhere and nowhere, high-pitched, echoing through the ceiling panels, rattling in the wheel wells. The figure's hand brushed the last headrest, and the vinyl dipped again, sharply, as if someone had thrown themselves into place. They jerked back, pulse thundering. And then came the voice. It was faint, but clear. A girl's voice, pitched somewhere between sing-song and plea. "Sit down." 2 words, spoken with the finality of a command. The figure swallowed hard, their throat aching, and slowly lowered themselves into the rear bench. The seat gave under their weight and under another. A pressure pressed against their side, solid, warm. Their breath caught, but they did not move. They could feel the shape of a shoulder against their own, invisible yet undeniable. The bus's engine roared louder, vibrating through the floor, and for the first time the vehicle lurched. Tires squealed, fog split open under headlights, and the lot blurred into motion. The figure gripped the edge of the seat, knuckles white, while unseen passengers shifted around them, rows of cushions sighing, adjusting. They weren't alone. They had never been alone. The bus had only been waiting for enough of them to climb aboard. Streetlights slid past the windows, though none should have stood on that road. Buildings flashed, half recognizable, warped like memories seen underwater. The bus was moving not through town, but through something else, a place stitched from fragments of streets and stories. Somewhere between the world remembered and the world lost, the figure tried to speak, to ask where they were going, but the words withered in their throat. Around them, the laughter swelled, filling the cabin like a chorus. Little voices overlapping, rising and falling. Then, cutting through them all, came the girl's voice again, closer, clearer, right at their ear. This time, the words carried no playfulness. They were sharp, whispered with teeth. "You missed your stop." The bus plunged deeper into the fog, and the headlights found a road no map had ever drawn. The town should have ended at the corner of Main Street, where the stoplight blinked red into empty intersections. But the bus didn't stop. It didn't even slow. The figure gripped the back of the seat in front of them, steadying against each curve of the wheel. Outside, familiar places twisted into new shapes. Houses stretched taller than they should, their windows glowing faintly, too high for ladders, too far for safety. Street signs flickered with letters that rearranged themselves every time the headlights passed. One moment they read elm, then river, then nothing but black metal poles standing without names. The bus drove with purpose, though no driver sat behind the wheel. The figure leaned into the aisle, trying to catch a glimpse of the front, but the reflection in the mirror betrayed nothing but shadow. It wasn't absence. It was worse. The space where the driver should be seemed filled by something dense and heavy, something that absorbed the light instead of reflecting it. Their stomach twisted as they stared too long, and they pulled back, breathing hard. The children's laughter softened, replaced by whispers that carried through the air like moth wings. Some of the words were clear enough to sting. "We were first. We stayed too long. It's your turn now." Each phrase seemed meant only for the listener, secrets passed down row by row, the kind of playground truths kids speak in half giggles and half fear. The figure pressed their palms against their knees, wishing for silence. But the bus fed on sound. Every inhale, every shudder was swallowed and echoed back. doubled until it was impossible to tell what belonged to the living and what did not. Outside, the road narrowed, flanked by trees that hadn't grown in decades. Their trunks bent inward, arching above the bus like ribs closing around a heart. Branches brushed the roof with dry fingers, scratching in rhythm with the squeal of tires. The headlights carved tunnels into the dark, but nothing lay beyond them, just more fog, more bending path. The figure's sense of direction faltered. It no longer mattered where the town had been. They weren't in it anymore. The seat beside them pressed down again, harder this time, the invisible shoulder heavier, closer. A breath filled their ear, hot, damp, like someone leaning in too close stirring a secret. The figure turned, but all they found was the impression of a shape in the air, like the afterimage of a face burned into vision after staring at light. They shut their eyes, but even in darkness the outline remained. And then came the sound of chalk. It scratched faintly, steady, deliberate. The kind of noise a teacher makes while filling a board, except there was no chalk, no board, no classroom. The figure opened their eyes, and there it was. Across the fogged window, words were writing themselves, letters carved in white streaks. They leaned closer, heart hammering, breath fogging the glass until the words cleared into focus. No exit. The bus shuddered as if agreeing. A deep vibration rattled through the floorboards, the seats, even the bones of those sitting inside. The whispers stopped. The children's voices fell silent in unison, leaving a vacuum of sound so complete it made the figure dizzy. And then, as if on cue, every headrest dipped at once. Each row sagged under the weight of invisible passengers taking their places. The entire bus was full now. The air swelled with their presence, heavy with warmth that pressed into the skin like hands. The figure stood, unable to bear it, stumbling into the aisle. Every seat leaned subtly toward them, cushions bowing as if the invisible children had turned in unison. They could feel the stare of dozens of eyes that were not there, watching with intent older than the road itself. The aisle stretched longer than it should, as if the bus had grown while they weren't looking. Step by step, they moved toward the front, toward the driver's shadowed seat. The closer they came, the colder the air grew. Their breath plumed in sharp clouds, their hands stiff with frost, though the rest of the bus remained sweltering with phantom bodies. When they reached the final step behind the driver's chair, they hesitated, fingers trembling above the vinyl. The figure leaned forward, heart hammering, and whispered, "Where are we going?" The shadow turned. It didn't move like a person. It folded like pages caught in wind, its edges tearing through the air as though it were made of paper and smoke. Where a face should have been, there was only depth, an endless well of black that pulled at the light. And then it spoke. Its voice was not human, nor child, nor machine. It was the creak of old swings at midnight, the hiss of air brakes bleeding into silence, the collective sigh of 1,000 empty classrooms. Its answer was simple: home. The bus jerked violently, throwing the figure into the aisle. Lights above sputtered, glass rattled, seats groaned as passengers leaned forward. Outside, the trees gave way to a clearing where something massive loomed in the fog. Tall, rectangular, windows stacked like teeth. The unmistakable silhouette of a school, waiting with doors wide open, its halls darker than the night around them. The headlights cut across its face, and for a single heartbeat the figure thought they saw children standing in those windows. Rows of pale faces pressed to glass, watching the bus arrive. The bus braked hard, screeching, and the aisle filled with the sound of footsteps, dozens of them, racing down the rows though no bodies ran. The doors hissed open, and the first wave of invisible children bolted into the night, toward the waiting building. The figure remained sprawled on the floor, staring as the bus emptied seat by seat. They knew, with a hollow certainty, what came next, their turn. The bus doors hissed, and silence poured in from the clearing. The figure lay still on the aisle floor, chest rising and falling too fast, palms pressed against the ridged rubber beneath them. Outside, the fog thickened, rising like smoke around the shape of the building waiting in the dark. It was a school, but not theirs. Its bricks were the wrong color, too pale, like bleached bone, and its windows stretched too tall, too narrow, as though the architect had built a prison and called it a place of learning. The last invisible feet thudded down the steps. A rush of air followed them, and then the weight inside the bus lifted all at once, leaving the figure gasping as if they had been underwater. The seats sagged empty again, shadows retreating, whispers fading. Only the open door remained, spilling a narrow beam of light onto the dirt path that led directly to the front entrance of the school. The figure told themselves not to move, not to follow, but their body betrayed them. Feet stumbled down the steps, legs trembling. Gravel crunched under their shoes, too loud in the silence. The bus doors hissed shut behind them like a final seal. When they turned, the bus was gone. No taillights, no engine, no path leading back to the town. Only the hill, the clearing, and the school. Its doors yawned wide, and from inside came a sound that did not belong, the faint clatter of lockers closing, one after another, like dominoes falling in sequence. The noise echoed down the halls and spilled into the night. The figure stepped closer, each movement slower than the last. The entrance smelled of dust and mildew, but underneath was something sharper, metallic, like the inside of an old locker key clenched too long in the hand. Fluorescent lights buzzed above, most dead, a few twitching in erratic rhythm. The floor was polished tile, but streaked with dirt as if hundreds of shoes had trailed mud through the halls recently. Yet there were no footprints, only smears that stopped mid-step, fading before they reached the walls. The sound of lockers echoed again, but this time it was joined by a voice. Faint, childlike. A single word stretched into 2 syllables, spoken from the dark end of the hallway. Play. The figure froze, throat tightening. Their own voice broke in a whisper. Who's there? The reply came instantly. A dozen voices, overlapping, spilling from the lockers, the classrooms, the vents above. They all whispered the same thing. Come play. Come play. Come play. The hallway bent subtly as the figure walked, stretching longer, as though the school rearranged itself to keep them from reaching its end. Doors lined either side, some cracked open, others locked with chains. The chains rattled faintly as if tugged from the inside. In one window, a faint handprint appeared, pressing against the glass from within. Small, child-sized, the figure hurried past, their heartbeat loud enough to drown out the whispers. At the far end, a stairwell gaped open, its steps leading both up and down. The buzzing light above the basement stairs flickered, sputtering with sparks. The air that rose from below was colder, damp, filled with a smell that belonged to dirt, not tile. They should have turned and run. But something in the silence urged them forward, as if every locked door, every whispering locker, every pale window face had guided them here. Step by step, they descended. The basement was wrong from the first glance. The walls weren't brick or cinder block. They were rough stone, damp with condensation, like the inside of a cave. Water dripped in the distance, each drop echoing louder than it should. The hallway stretched farther than the school above could allow. It bent into tunnels, one after another, lined with doors that had no handles. As they passed, faint knocks followed them. Each door thudded once, then fell quiet, as if testing the wood. The further they walked, the louder the knocks became, overlapping until it sounded like dozens of fists beating in rhythm, begging to be let out. At the end of the hall was a door unlike the rest. Taller. Iron. Its surface rusted, streaked with something darker that looked too much like dried blood. The figure reached for it, though their body trembled with every step. Behind them, the knocking stopped. Silence swallowed the hallway, heavy and absolute. The iron door breathed. Its hinges groaned with the sound of something alive, shifting. A faint red light seeped through its cracks, pulsing as if keeping time with a heartbeat. The figure lifted a hand, fingertips brushing the cold metal. At the touch, the whispers returned, sharper this time, hissing in unison from the stone walls. "Don't open it." But the lock clicked anyway, turning on its own. The door groaned wide, and the red glow spilled across the figure's face. Inside, something moved. The iron door shuddered as it swung open, and the figure stumbled back, shielding their face from the sudden red glow that spilled across the hallway. It was not a steady light, but a pulse, faint and irregular, like the flicker of a dying candle or the beat of something buried underground. The stone walls drank it in, and the damp air grew heavier, as though the light itself carried weight. Inside, the room was larger than it should have been, deeper than the basement allowed. The ceiling arched high, ribbed with jagged stone, and the floor dipped into a hollow, a pit that stretched wider than the school above. The glow came from that pit, throbbing up from beneath, red like embers, yet no heat reached the figure's skin. Instead, the air was cold enough to sting. First, the pit seemed empty. Only mist curled above it, rolling slowly like smoke across the uneven stone. But when the figure stepped closer, careful not to let their shadow fall too far, the mist parted and something took shape. Rows of school desks lined the bottom of the pit, dozens of them, each arranged neatly as though for a class. The red glow illuminated their surfaces, and every desk was filled. Children sat hunched over, heads bowed, hands clasped on the wood as if frozen in prayer. They did not move. They did not breathe. Their faces were blurred, indistinct, as if smudged out of memory. But their shadows were wrong. The glow stretched them longer than their bodies, bending them up the walls, crawling toward the ceiling in unnatural shapes. The figure's throat tightened. A soundless gasp caught inside. One of the children stirred. Slowly, its head lifted, and though its face was still blurred, its eyes opened wide, glowing faintly red like coals buried in ash. The others followed. One by one, heads rose, eyes snapping open, a room of silent stares burning through the mist. Then they spoke, not in words, but in sound. A single note hummed low, vibrating the stone beneath the figure's feet. It rose, gaining depth, layering into a chorus that echoed through the basement halls. The walls trembled. Dust rained from the ceiling. The figure stumbled back toward the doorway, but the iron door slammed shut with a force that rattled the hinges. Locked. Trapped. The hum grew louder, now threaded with faint words. "Stay. Stay. Stay." The children rose from their desks in unison, chairs scraping against stone. They did not walk but glided, their feet never touching the ground, drifting up the incline of the pit toward the figure. The mist followed them, curling higher, swallowing the ceiling until only the red glow remained. The figure pressed against the door, fists pounding, but the iron did not budge. Their breath came fast, ragged, steam rising in the cold air. When they turned, the children were closer. Their blurred faces seemed sharper now, features tugged by the light. their mouths stretched too wide, their teeth too many. The hum fractured into whispers, dozens of voices filling the chamber. Stay with us. Stay forever. One reached out a hand. Its fingers were too long, bending backward as if broken, yet they clawed forward, clutching the air. The figure dodged aside, slipping along the wall, searching for any break, any escape. Their hand brushed a seam in the stone, a crack just wide enough to catch their fingers. They pulled. The wall shifted slightly, stone scraping on stone, revealing a narrow passage hidden in the shadows. Without thinking, they forced themselves through, scraping shoulders and knees against jagged rock. The whispers surged behind them, furious now, voices overlapping in screams that shook the passage. The glow followed, spilling red through the crack, stretching long fingers of light toward their back. The tunnel narrowed, pressing tighter, forcing them to crawl. Their palms slipped on damp stone, nails breaking against rough edges. The screams grew distant, but the echoes clung to the walls, chasing them forward. Finally, the tunnel spat them out into a new chamber. This room was different. Smaller, quiet. The air was dry, filled with dust instead of mist. A single desk stood in the center, lit by a weak beam of white light dripping down from a crack in the ceiling. On the desk lay a book, leather-bound, its cover cracked and worn. The figure's breath steadied, if only slightly. They stepped closer, every nerve on edge, every shadow suspect. The book's surface was coated in dust, but the edges of its pages were clean, as though it had been opened recently. Their hand hovered, trembling, then lowered. Fingers brushed the cover. The leather was warm, too warm. The book opened on its own. The pages turned slowly, whispering against each other, until they stopped on a page in the center. Ink bled across it, dark and fresh, spelling words that had not been written moments before. We see you. The letters dripped, running like blood across the paper, and the white light flickered. The book trembled, then slammed shut with a sound that shook the chamber. Dust rained down. Behind them, something moved in the tunnel, something coming closer. The sound in the tunnel was faint at first, no more than a scrape, like nails dragging slowly across stone. Then came the breath. Not steady, not human. It shuddered and rasped, rattling the narrow space as though the tunnel itself had lungs. The figure froze, pressed against the wall of the small chamber, staring at the jagged mouth of the passage they had crawled through. Dust drifted down from the ceiling. The scrape came again, closer now. Something was moving through, dragging itself slowly, deliberately, as if savoring the distance. The book on the desk began to hum. Low at first, like a vibration deep in the wood, then louder, rattling the legs against the stone floor. Its pages quivered, though no wind touched them. The figure's eyes locked on the cover, that cracked leather breathing with a life of its own, and a single thought cut through their fear. Whatever was coming, the book wanted it here. The figure backed away, steps careful, though every muscle screamed to run. The scrape became heavier, louder, like claws gouging the rock. Then the breathing stopped. Silence pressed in thick, almost louder than the noise before, and then a hand emerged. It was not human. Fingers too long, skin stretched thin, veins glowing faintly with the same ember-red light as the pit. The hand clawed forward, gripping the stone, dragging the rest of the body into the chamber. Its form bent unnaturally to fit through the narrow passage, joints cracking as it squeezed, bones rearranging to force itself into the room. The figure's breath came fast, steaming in the air. Their back pressed against the far wall. The creature pulled through, head first. Its skull scraped the stone, face blurring in and out like the children in the pit, but its eyes were clear, two burning coals set deep in hollows, fixed unblinking on them. The book began to tremble, then snapped open again, pages turning in a blur. Words spilled across the parchment faster than the eye could follow, ink soaking through like veins spreading across flesh. A whisper rose from the book, dozens of voices layered, hissing, "Write it down. Write it down. Write it down." The figure shook their head, stumbling forward, but the book's whisper dug deep, crawling inside their ears, settling in their skull. The creature rose taller now, its body snapping into place, limbs folding too many times, shoulders bending wrong. Its mouth opened wide, too wide, and no sound came out. Only silence, deeper than the silence of the school above, swallowing every other sound in the room. The figure clutched their ears, gasping. The silence felt alive, pressing against them, crushing, like standing under water too deep to breathe. Their chests tightened. The only sound was their heart, thudding fast and desperate. The book slammed shut again. The silence cracked like glass, shattering into a sharp, piercing scream that tore through the chamber. The figure staggered, clutching their head, but through the scream they heard it, a voice. "Singular this time, your turn." The book slid off the desk, hitting the floor with a weight that shook dust from the ceiling. It opened to a blank page. A pen lay beside it, though it hadn't been there before. The figure stared, trembling. The words crawled across the paper, black lines forming. "Tell us how it ends." The creature moved closer, its body folding unnaturally to keep its eyes locked with theirs. Its shadow stretched too far across the chamber, twisting around the walls like liquid. The pen rolled toward the figure's feet. For a moment, neither moved. The book waited. The creature waited. The figure bent slowly, picking up the pen. Their hand shook so badly they nearly dropped it. The creature leaned closer, mouth open wide, teeth endless, silent breath chilling the air. The figure pressed the pen to the page, ink spilled instantly, bleeding into words before they even wrote, "You never left." The figure staggered back, eyes wide. They had not written it. Their hand moved, but the words wrote themselves, crawling across the page, sealing into the paper like scars. The chamber shuddered. The creature stepped back into the tunnel, folding itself away, disappearing into the dark, but the voice from the book whispered again, calm now, almost gentle, "Keep writing." The figure dropped the pen, but the pages turned themselves, filling line by line with words they had not written. Descriptions of the chamber. Descriptions of the children. Descriptions of their own thoughts, their own fear, written before they even thought them. The book was writing them. They stumbled toward the tunnel, but the passage no longer ended where it had before. It stretched deeper now, lined with doors on either side, each one chained shut. From behind them came whispers, faint at first, then louder, children's voices rising in unison. "Stay. Stay. Stay." The figure turned, chest heaving. The white light had vanished. The chamber was gone. Only the tunnel remained, endless, doors rattling, voices swelling, and from the far end, something began to walk toward them. The tunnel was longer than it had any right to be. No matter how many steps the figure took, the end never came closer. The darkness never broke. The walls pressed in narrow and cold, carved from stone that seemed older than the school itself, slick with moisture that glistened faintly in the dim light bleeding from nowhere. And on either side, the doors stood waiting, rusting iron frames, wood blackened and warped, heavy chains knotted tight across their centers. Some doors looked swollen, as if something inside had pushed against them for years. Others trembled lightly, as though their secrets were breathing just behind the thin barrier. The figure's footsteps echoed too loud, bouncing between the walls. They slowed, staring at the nearest door. Its chains rattled faintly, though no hand touched them. From behind it came a sound. A laugh. High, quick, and childlike. Then silence. Their throat went dry. They moved to the next door. This one shook once, sharp enough to clink the chains against the iron. A whisper leaked through, muffled, but the words were clear enough to freeze them in place. "We've been waiting for you." The figure stumbled back, chest tight, but the tunnel did not allow escape. Behind them, the way they had come was already swallowed in shadow. No door marked the chamber they had left. No trace of where they'd begun. Only this hallway, this march of doors, and the voices calling through them. They pressed forward, steps uneven. Each door spoke in turn. One wept softly, the sobs of a young girl muffled by stone. Another sang, slow and tuneless, each word heavy as if drowning. Another whispered prayers, broken, repeated again and again until the voice cracked into nothing. The figure covered their ears, but the sound seeped through skin, through bone. The tunnel was alive with them now, a chorus of lost children who could not be silenced. Then came the door without chains. It stood farther down, recessed into the stone, wood pale and smooth, untouched by rot. Its surface was carved with symbols that pulsed faintly, glowing with that same ember-red light they had seen in the pit. The figure stopped cold. The voices hushed all at once, leaving the tunnel in suffocating silence. They stepped closer, unable to stop themselves. The glow from the markings pulsed in time with their heartbeat, faster as they neared. They reached a hand forward, hesitating inches from the wood. The air burned around it, humming low and sharp, but still they leaned closer, and then the door whispered, not like the others. Not muffled, not faint. This voice was clear, cutting, as though it spoke directly into their mind. "You already know what's behind me." The figure's breath hitched. Their hand trembled, fingers brushing the smooth wood. Heat seared their skin. The whisper continued, low and coaxing. "Open it. Let me out. You've seen enough. You've heard enough. Now it's time to remember." Chains clinked all along the hallway. The other doors shook violently, voices rising in chaos, shouts, screams, sobs, laughter, all crashing together into a single roar. The figure staggered back, clutching their ears, but the door before them stayed still, its whisper steady in the storm. "You were always meant to open me." The figure turned to run, but the tunnel betrayed them. No matter how far they moved, they remained before the same pale door, the same glowing symbols. The others had vanished, swallowed in shadow. Only this door remained, stretching higher now, looming like a wall. The whisper deepened, filling their chest with vibration. "You cannot leave. You never left. You're still here." Their hand rose again, unbidden, drawn to the wood. Their fingers pressed against the hot surface. Pain seared through skin, burning deep, but they could not pull away. The symbols flared, red brightening into white, cracking the wood like glass under pressure. A line split down the center. Air rushed from the gap, not warm, not cold, alive. It pulled at them, dragging hair forward, tugging their body closer. The chains of the vanished doors rattled faintly, as though in warning, but nothing could stop it. The pale door creaked open. Darkness swelled from the gap. Not ordinary darkness, but something thicker, heavier, moving like smoke. It filled the air, pressed into their lungs, stole their breath. And from that blackness came a sound they had not expected, the rumble of an engine, slow at first, then louder, filling the tunnel, echoing until the ground itself shook. The figure's eyes widened. Headlights cut through the dark, two sharp beams glowing low. The unmistakable silhouette of a school bus loomed just beyond the door, its yellow sides cracked and rusted, its windows blacked out. The whisper spoke one final time, soft as a lullaby. "You've reached the end of the ride." The headlights flared brighter, blinding, and the door blew wide open. The light swallowed everything. When it faded, the figure found themselves standing at the bottom of a narrow stairwell, one hand gripping a cold steel rail. Their feet rested on rubber steps, worn smooth by decades of children's shoes. The air smelled faintly of diesel, sharp and metallic, mixed with something else, something sweeter, like fruit left to rot in the sun. They blinked, steadying themselves. The pale door was gone. The tunnel was gone. Around them stretched the hollow body of a school bus. The ceiling curved low overhead, lined with yellow paint dulled into gray. Windows stretched in rows along either side, glass fogged and cracked, their edges traced with streaks of condensation that crawled downward like fingers. Every seat was in place, green vinyl torn in long splits, foam guts spilling out. The aisle stretched before them, narrow and infinite, but it was not empty. Shapes sat in the seats. They weren't clear at first, more like shadows given weight, dark lumps with faint edges. The figure squinted, leaning closer, and the details sharpened. Children. Not whole. Not alive. Their faces blurred, hollow where eyes should have been, mouths sealed into pale slits. Their bodies sagged against the seat backs, stiff and still, as though they had been waiting for years without moving. The bus door hissed shut behind the figure. The sound snapped through the silence like a trap closing. They flinched, spinning, but the exit was gone, sealed smooth into yellow steel. The bus shifted. A low vibration shivered through the floor, rattling the windows in their frames. The figures stumbled forward, catching themselves on a torn seat. Ahead, the driver's chair loomed, but it was empty. The wheel turned once, slowly, as if gripped by invisible hands. The engine roared alive. The children stirred, not all at once, but in ripples, like a breeze passing through a field. Heads turned one after another, faces dragging toward the aisle, toward the intruder. Hollow sockets widened, pale mouths tore into smiles without lips. No sound came from them, just the scrape of movement, the creak of stiff fabric and bone. The figure's breath hitched. They stepped back, bumping into another seat. The child in it shifted closer, head tilting against their arm with a soft, rubbery squeal. Its mouth opened wider, stretching too far, tearing the pale skin at the edges. The aisle pulsed with shadows. The engine revved, louder now, shaking the walls. The lights overhead flickered, throwing the figures into stuttering frames of motion, jerks, twitches, their hands clawing the seat backs as they began to rise. The figure bolted down the aisle, shoving past cold shapes that leaned into them, skin clammy, grip too strong. "Let me off," they whispered, breath breaking. "Please let me off." No one answered. The children's mouths opened wider, too wide, stretching in silent screams. Their sockets poured black tears that streaked down their cheeks, soaking the vinyl, dripping into the aisle. The figure slipped on it, catching themselves, pushing forward toward the front. The wheel spun fast now, the bus lurching forward though no road lay outside. The windows blurred with darkness, rushing shapes sliding past like trees bending under impossible speed. The sound of tires against pavement screamed, though the bus was trapped in nothingness. They reached the driver's seat. Empty. Just a wheel turning itself, pedals pressing under no feet. The radio on the dash crackled, static filling the air. Then a voice broke through, warped and broken, but words all the same. All passengers must remain seated until the end of the ride. The figure grabbed the wheel, yanking hard. It didn't move. Their arms shook, muscles straining, but the bus ignored them, racing deeper into the black. In the mirror above, their own reflection stared back, only it wasn't them. It was a child's face. Wide, pale, empty, they gasped, stumbling backward. The children in the seats leaned closer now, spilling into the aisle. Their hands stretched long, too long, fingers curling around seat backs like roots digging into soil. Their bodies dragged themselves forward, crowding closer, filling the aisle like water flooding a drain. The figure shoved their way back, heart hammering. But there was nowhere left to run. Every seat was full. Every aisle closed. The only place left was down. Their eyes darted to the floor. Between the rubber mats, cracks had formed, glowing faintly red. The same ember light from the pale door. It pulsed with the engine's rhythm, stronger, wider, until the rubber split open. Heat rushed upward, burning their face. The bus was sinking, not into a road, not into shadow, but into fire. The glow swallowed the aisle, licking at the seats, wrapping around the children. Their hollow sockets flared with light, their mouths opening into endless screams at last, a sound that shredded the air. The figure dropped to their knees, clutching the torn seat, staring into the flames below. Shapes moved within them, faces rising in the fire, familiar and broken, reaching upward with hands too close, too real. The engine howled one final time. The bus plunged downward, swallowed whole, and everything went black. The darkness cracked open with a single sound, brakes screeching. The figure's eyes shot open. They were still on the bus. The fire was gone. The seats were intact, lined in their familiar green vinyl. The children were gone too, leaving only silence, thick and heavy. The windows showed no flame, no rushing void. Only night. The faint glow of a street lamp hovered just beyond the glass, distorted by fog clinging to the pane. For a moment, it seemed over. For a moment, the bus felt empty again. Then the engine growled low, a deep rumble that seemed to come not from the machine, but from beneath the floorboards, as though the earth itself were breathing. The wheel turned. The bus shifted into motion. The figures stumbled to their feet, swaying with the sudden movement. They peered out the window, desperate for a landmark, any sign of where they were. Houses lined the street, but they weren't right. Their roofs bent at strange angles, too sharp. Windows glowed faintly, but revealed nothing inside, no silhouettes, no movement. Every porch was empty, every yard still. The bus turned a corner. The houses repeated. Another turn. The same houses again. The same lamp. The same fog. A loop. The figure pressed their forehead against the cool glass, breathing hard, their reflection staring back. Only this time, their reflection smiled. They jerked back, heart pounding. The reflection lingered, pale and grinning. Before the glass went black, the bus stopped. The door hissed open, releasing a sigh of cold air. The figure hesitated, staring into the fog beyond the steps. They could see nothing. No road, no ground. Just white mist, rolling and shifting, thick as smoke. But the silence behind them was worse. They stepped forward. One foot on the stairs, then a sound.it began soft, almost gentle, shoes scuffing against the aisle. One step, then another. Slow, heavy, coming closer, the figure froze. They didn't turn. The door stood open before them, fog spilling inside, swallowing the first step. Behind them, the footsteps grew louder, closer, accompanied now by the squeak of vinyl as weight shifted against the seats. Someone or something was rising again. They lunged out the door. The air outside was damp, clinging, heavy with the smell of rust and mold. Their shoes found ground, but it wasn't pavement. It was soil, packed, uneven, as if no road had ever existed here. They looked back. The bus door closed. The windows were filled again, not with children this time, but with figures taller, darker. Their faces pressed against the glass, smeared with shadow, hollow eyes fixed forward. Their hands tapped slowly, rhythmically, against the panes, all in unison. Tap, 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 the engine roared. The lights flared. The bus pulled away, rolling into the fog until it dissolved completely, swallowed whole by white. The figures stood alone. The ground beneath them shifted, softening. They staggered back, looking down. The soil wasn't soil at all, it was ash. Gray, powdery, still warm, clinging to their shoes. They knelt, pressing their hand into it, and their breath caught. It wasn't ash. It was dust. Bone dust. A low horn echoed through the fog. The same deep blare of the bus. Only now it came from every direction surrounding them. The fog pulsed with the sound, pushing inward, closer, until it felt like hands brushing against their arms, their face, their throat. They turned, searching for escape, but the world offered nothing. No street, no houses, only mist. Then the headlights appeared, twin beams of yellow, cutting through the fog, bearing down the road that wasn't there. The engine thundered, louder than before, shaking the ground. The figures stumbled back, heart hammering, until their spine hit something solid. A stop sign, red, rusted, planted in the ash, its paint peeling. The headlights grew brighter. The horn blared again. The bus was coming back. Faster now. Its outline broke the fog, barreling forward with impossible speed, tires screaming against nothing. The figure pressed themselves against the stop sign, trembling. Their breath came fast, white in the air, but the fog swallowed even that. The bus didn't slow. Through the windshield, the driver's seat was still empty. But the aisle was full again. Children. Dozens of them. Their hollow eyes locked onto the figure. Their mouths opened in one long, silent scream. The bus bore down, closer, closer, the horn shattering the air. The stop sign shook in the figure's grip. They squeezed their eyes shut, and the sound broke off. When they opened their eyes, the headlights were gone. The bus was gone. They stood alone in the fog again, the stop sign at their back, but now there were footsteps circling them in the ash. Small footsteps, many of them, and none of them belonged to the living. The footsteps pressed closer, circling, light and quick, like children running on gravel. The figure turned in place, eyes straining through the fog. Nothing appeared. Only the sound, surrounding them, faster now, until it felt like the ground itself was alive. Then a voice. Small, fragile. A child's whisper, time to get back on. The figure spun. No one stood there. Just white mist rolling in waves, curling around their ankles. But the voice had been clear, close enough to feel the breath of it against their ear. They staggered back. The stop sign rattled faintly behind them, metal groaning as if in warning. Then, as if on cue, the headlights reappeared. This time, the bus moved slowly, almost gently, pushing through the fog as if it had all the time in the world. Its tires made no sound against the ash, and yet the earth trembled with each turn. The figure couldn't move, couldn't breathe. The bus rolled forward, stopping inches away. The door opened with a hiss. Inside, the aisle stretched longer than before, impossibly long, seats vanishing into black. But the figures were there, row after row of them. Children, parents, faces familiar and unfamiliar, every passenger hollow-eyed, every mouth a gaping dark. Their heads turned as one, following the figure outside, waiting. At the front, the driver's seat was no longer empty. A shadow sat there. Not man, not woman. Something vast and wrong, its form bending the light around it. Its hands gripped the wheel, hands too long, too many fingers. A face turned, stitched together from every passenger that had ever boarded, lips moving in unison with the hollow crowd. "You missed your stop," it said. A chorus of voices layered into one. The figure shook their head, trembling, but the fog pressed closer from behind, herding them toward the door. Every instinct screamed to run, yet the world outside no longer offered direction. Only fog, only ash. The bus was the only thing that remained. Their foot lifted, hesitated, and then it landed on the first step. The passengers leaned forward in unison, as though inhaling. The sound was not breath, but something deeper, like wind tearing through a cavern, dragging at the figure's chest. They clutched the railing, forcing themselves up, step by step. The air grew thicker, pressing down until every motion was agony. By the time they reached the aisle, the doors slammed shut behind them. The fog outside disappeared. The world outside disappeared. The bus began to move. The children smiled now, not with joy, with hunger. Their mouths stretched wider, wider, until their faces cracked, skin splitting soundlessly. The figure stumbled down the aisle, looking for an empty seat, but the bus seemed endless, rows multiplying with every step. No end, no driver, no front, only seats, only faces. And then the realization struck: they weren't walking toward the front at all. They were walking deeper. The aisle curved downward, sloping, pulling them into a spiral. The passengers blurred, their faces melting into smears of shadow. The sound of the horn echoed again, but this time it came from below, far below, vibrating up through the metal floor. The figure's knees buckled. They fell into a seat. The vinyl was wet, sticky. They looked down. Their hands pressed against the cushion, coming away dark. Blood. The child beside them turned slowly. A girl, hair in pigtails, her skin gray, her eyes empty. She tilted her head, smiling wide enough to split her cheeks. "Now you're one of us," she whispered. The bus jolted, picking up speed, barreling faster into the spiral. The windows outside showed no fog now, no street, no world. Only black, pure black. A void rushing past, swallowing sound, swallowing light. The figure tried to rise, but their body would not obey. Their legs felt heavy, their arms stiff. They looked down, and their skin was fading, paling, draining of color. Their reflection in the glass of the window was no longer theirs at all. Hollow eyes, a gaping mouth. The girl giggled softly. Every bus has to be full before it can finish the route. The horn blared again, deafening, shaking the entire frame. The passengers leaned forward, mouths open in silent screams, shadows pouring from their throats into the aisle, thick and black, rising like smoke. The bus shuddered, tilted forward, plunged deeper into the dark, and then silence, only the creak of the seats. Only the sound of the engine's hum. Only the endless ride. Somewhere, far above, in the world of daylight, a school bus sat resting at the edge of town. Its paint flaking, its seats torn. Empty. But if you listen closely, if you press your ear to its windows, you can hear the faint sound of footsteps. The faint hum of an engine, and a voice whispering from the aisle. "Next stop, Yours.